So what makes somebody stop and take notice of a painting? I think a big part of what causes somebody to stop and look at a painting is how dynamic it is. All right, welcome to Paint Coach. If you're new to the channel, my name is Chris Bornatero, and I help thousands of students every single month get better at painting through my online courses and tutorials. And so today we're going to talk about a painting being dynamic and what exactly I mean by that. Now, this can come in many different forms, and the first I want to talk about is shapes. And I'm going to use this painting that I did here of this diner as an example. Now, yes, this was done with using AI. That's why this doesn't spell out anything, and there's some weird things happening with the lights there. People ask me, like, oh, like, do you struggle using AI photos because certain things can be off, or you have to like look for mistakes? The answer is yes, but I also, there's also mistakes in real photos, because even when I use real photos, I change a lot of things, and I don't rely on the photo to give me all the information, because I know that I need to translate the scene, not just copy it. So for me, honestly, like AI versus real photos, like my process stays the same, but that's a different topic for a different video. Let's get back to dynamic shapes. And kind of a better way to put it maybe is dynamic balance, which you probably have heard me talk about before. I always say, like, if you imagine a scale, you don't want balance, like normal balance. You want dynamic balance, meaning, you got a small shape and then you want a big shape, big and small, a lot of one thing, a little of another. That's what you're looking for. And so in terms of this painting, what I see, like when I was looking at the photo here, what I liked was like, oh, I have two kind of big bright shapes, or not big, but I have two bright shapes. I got this big one right here. Well, I guess you could probably incorporate the reflection in there as well. That's another note. Like what I just did there, always think of shapes, not things. Like I almost caught myself thinking like, ooh, diner and then reflection, two different things. Think shapes, not things. Keep that in mind. So I have this big light shape, and then I counter it with a small light shape in these cars. And you can see I just made it one car, simplified it. And so that's what I have in the painting here. One big light shape countered on the left side. If you split your canvas down the middle, you kind of want balance left to right. You also want it some kind of balance from up top, top and bottom. And I actually was debating on putting in, let's see if I can, if I was like, got 1, 2, and then there was like a street light or something up there. I was debating on putting that in. But anyways, dynamic balance. And another way to think about this, or another way, or the way kind of I learned about this, is from Edgar Payne's book, Composition of Outdoor Painting. He actually has certain composition, like kind of stock compositions, and one's called a steel yard, and that's pretty much this. It's like a big mass countered with a small like center of interest. Like a lot of times, in a painting, he'll have like a big, huge, tall, massive trees, right here, and there's a scene with like the mountains, and then he'll have like a little person standing right there, and that will be like the scene. And it's like this big shape, big mass countered with a small kind of focus of interest. So like just having it in my head, like when I came across, like when I was like looking for images, like this popped out. I was like, ooh, I like that. Like that has enough things going for it. I'll still have to change some things. And you actually can kind of see right here, like I still had to modify in Photoshop and just kind of like duplicated a lot of these trees to just make these wider. But yeah, so that's dynamic balance in terms of shapes. You want your shapes to be interesting, and kind of think of the big shapes that make up the scene. All right, now I'm talking a lot about composition here. And if you want to learn more about composition and kind of get like a full lesson on it, I have a free composition coaching guide. It's a series of short videos where I break down composition so you can actually understand it, so you can start implementing it in your own paintings. I always say there's no point in starting a painting if you don't figure out the composition. It doesn't matter how well you paint the painting. If the composition isn't there, paint's not going to work. So if you want to check that out, there's a link to it in the description of this video. All right, now another way a scene can be dynamic is color. And again, coming back to this one, yes, there are a lot of bright colors here, but the reason that that works so well and it pops and it grabs your attention is because of all the desaturated color here. If I had made a version of this and like this house was lit up, let me see if I can actually, that was lit up there, and maybe there's some more down here, and there was a whole bunch of street lights, and maybe there was like another coffee shop or something over on this side, and there's a lot of lights, and there's more street lights coming down here. Maybe reflected that down there and get the reflection there. Now I'm kind of starting to mess with that dynamic balance because I'm getting more and more saturated colors. Because this scene has so many grays, desaturated color, it makes this pop more. And it pops because we have a whole lot of one thing and then a little of another. So always keeping that in mind. A lot of one thing and a little of another. All right, next thing is being dynamic in values. I always break down my landscape compositions into 3 values: a dark, a mid-tone, and a light. And you've probably seen me do this in some of my previous videos, and I kind of do a underpainting, or I call it like a value map. And what I want is I want to make sure between that dark, mid-tone, and light, there's a dynamic balance within them. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to put this into black and white here. And then I'm just going to go to the filter and go to filter gallery. I like to do the cutout filter here. And I just do 3 levels. Hit OK. Now you can do this. There's an app called Value Study that's free, I believe. If not, I think it's like $5 for the year or something like that if you want to do this. But this kind of just illustrates my point. There's 3 values here. There's dark, there's mid-tone, and then the lights here. This isn't always like, putting it in this filter. It's not like 100% guaranteed to be exactly like what you should do. It's just kind of a guide. And so looking at this, I always like to say when I'm trying to come up with a value map or dynamic value shapes is I want it to be very clear and obvious which takes up the most space and which takes up the least space. I feel like that's very easy here. You can actually see it in the photo here really nicely, which is, I think it's very clear that the mid-tone takes up the most space because you have, well, especially in this one, the way I painted it, I actually pushed it a little more. You got like all of this pretty much, it's mid-tone. And then what's the least, pretty clear. It's the brightest bright and the dark is in the middle. So that's good dynamic balance. What I wouldn't want is to like be even. Like if I somehow like darken this tree, I mean, it could still work, but if I kind of maybe darken this and just kind of got like an even amount of dark and mid-tone, I think that's kind of even. And what would be even worse is if I had like an even amount of light somehow in here. But again, coming back to the idea of being dynamic, the last thing you want is like an even amount of dark, an even amount of mid-tone, and an even amount of light. All right, and the last thing is edges. Now, edges are really important. I feel like edges are the last thing that students like learn or get a hold of. I always say that the sign of an advanced painter is their ability to manipulate edges. And coming back to this idea of being dynamic. What is dynamic? It's a lot of one thing and a little of another thing. And here, a lot of soft edges. You can watch this whole tutorial on my Patreon page. Forgot to mention that. You can actually do a 7-day free trial, so you can go and watch this whole tutorial for free. And you'll watch me, when I'm painting all of this, doing a lot of working wet into wet paint to get these soft edges. There's these outline of trees in the fog, and, depending on how much dark I put in kind of influenced how much of the shape of the trees we saw. But you can see just how much all the different colors, it just flows right into the street, right into that dark, flows right into these reflections, like a lot of blending of the colors here. Just a lot of soft edges. The only areas where there's hard edges are in this sign and here. And again, it's a very small area compared to all the soft edges around it. Again, dynamic. A lot of soft, a little bit of hard edges. And this is kind of a common thing when painters try and communicate a focal point. A lot of times it will be the area of highest contrast, meaning like the only area or the greatest area where a darkest dark and lightest light touch, kind of coming back to what we were talking about with the value shapes. You kind of want the focal point to be the only area where darkest dark and lightest light touch. Another thing is like areas of highest saturation, color, which we talked about again. Another one is edges, is kind of a lot of times painters will use like harder edges kind of in the focal point if they want. You can use all those in your focal point. You can use one of them. You know, I guess you could maybe try and use none. I don't know if that'd work out. But just don't think, I think a lot of people think sometimes, oh, the focal point is just the area where there's the most detail. Not necessarily. I mean, I guess you could put more detail in the focal point, but that's not always the only way to drive the viewer's eye there. All right, so I hope this video helped understand this idea of being dynamic. And I really hope you can implement this in your opinion. If you have any questions on this whole idea of being dynamic, please leave those questions in the comments section. I'll do my best to answer them. And again, if you want to see this full tutorial, it's on my Patreon page, and the link to that is in the description of this video. And if you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero here telling you to go get painting.